Good afternoon. My name is Jasmine Lewis, and I'm a transgender woman and an outreach and education peer at the Mount Sinai Institute for Advanced Medicine. I'm excited to welcome you to our World AIDS Day program with a special focus on the transgender community. Since 1988, World AIDS Day is held on the 1st of December each year and is an opportunity for people worldwide to unite in the fight against HIV, show their support for people living with HIV, and to remember those who have died. With the governor's plan to end AIDS in New York State by the year 2020, this year's World AIDS Day not only reminds us of how far we have come, but how much further we need to go to end this epidemic. It is my honor to introduce today's featured speaker, Octavia Lewis. Octavia Y. Lewis is a patient services manager at the Community Health Network Family Health Center in Jamaica, New York. Octavia has accomplished several noteworthy accomplishments since relocating to New York City. A graduate from the Audre Lorde Project Transjustice School, Octavia's numerous accomplishments include publishing an article in The Root entitled, "I'm Black, I'm Trans, I'm HIV positive, and I'm okay," and completing the cover for the March edition of Pause magazine. Octavia was elected to the board of directors of Positive Women's Network, Positive Trans, and the Tennessee Transjustice Project, and serves as a national advisory board member of the Center of Excellence in Transgender Healthcare. Octavia Lewis holds an associate in general studies from the Atlanta Metropolitan College, a bachelor's in business administration and marketing from Georgia Gwinnett College, a master's in public administration and health services management from the Keller Graduate School of Management, and is about to embark upon the journey of attaining her doctoral PhD in public policy and administration from Walden University. Please give a warm welcome to Octavia Lewis.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Octavia Y. Lewis. Again, I believe in a person to whom much is given, much is required. So with that being said, I also like to check my own privilege, meaning that I am not the rule, but I am the exception to the rule. We're going to be addressing the root causes of HIV in the transgender community. Identifying transgender people within current data systems can be challenging. Some transgender people may not disclose for safety issues. Some may be in the stage of trying to define whom they are. Discrimination is another reason why some trans people do not disclose. Healthcare providers do not always accurately document people of trans experience. Oftentimes we go to our healthcare providers and we are not giving the adequate ways of documenting who we are. And I know it has been a change, or there is a shift in the way that that is being addressed. Most healthcare providers now ask the sex in which you were assigned at birth and how you identify now. So that is a way in which we can accurately capture those of trans experience. Frontline staff are not culturally competent nor sensitive. Just because some of us do not appear the way some of you think we should appear, or we do not fit the norm of the heteronormative cisgender binary system, does not negate the fact of whom we are. And I think that is a problem for a lot of us in our community, is that people do not accept us for face value. Again, with 34 states in the United States that do not have adequate, competent laws to protect people of trans experience, it is not easy for everyone to come out of their home in their authentic truth. Social stigma, even with more awareness, it brings a higher threat of danger. Even this year alone, there have been 24 24 women of color of trans experience that have been murdered. Those are only 24 that we know of. That is not saying that is all that have been murdered, because oftentimes when we are murdered, we are not identified in the authentic truth in which we live. According to the Transgender Violence Tracking Portal, an 8-year-old, and this was a cisgender boy that identified as trans, an 8-year-old boy was beaten to death by his father. A 14-year-old was strangled to death and stuffed under a bed. 2 16-year-olds were shot to death. 3 18-year-olds were stabbed to death, dismembered, or shot. 2 18-year-olds were murdered with no details being reported. And an 18-year-old suffered 2 violent attacks by a mob and survived. So see, these young people didn't even get to live to what the national average lifespan of a woman of trans experience, which is 35 years of age. Transgender health disparities data. And this comes from the national survey from the National Center for Transgender Equality. The survey was done in 2011. And the other demographic come from the New York State Survey, New York State LGBT Health, and Human Services Network 2009 survey. 19% refuse medical care due to their transgender or gender non-conforming status. 50% having to teach their medical providers about transgender care. I, being a woman of trans experience and an HIV positive woman, know all too well that statistic, because it is not easy to go to someone who is supposed to be treating you, but yet you have to turn and educate them on how to treat you. 4 times national average of HIV infection, with rates higher among transgender people of color, 28% overall, 56% Black African American per the CDC. 28% postpone medical care due to being discriminated against. 48% is the inability to afford health care. And much more likely to be homeless is 33% of the transgender community versus 14% of our cisgender community. We are more likely to have probable depression, 31%, versus 16% of, again, our cisgender population. We experience loneliness or have experienced violence, it was 28%. We have the highest ratings of barriers to health care. Transgender health care disparities continue. According to basic statistics from 2009 to 2013 in New York State, may I add, there were 212 confirmed HIV diagnoses. 210 of those were transgender women and 2 were transgender men. Roughly 10%, 22, were diagnosed HIV concurrent with AIDS. People of trans experience only accounted for 1% of all HIV diagnoses. New diagnoses among transgender persons by gender identity and year of diagnosis in New York City, 2009 to 2013. As you can see, in 2009, there were 38 reported cases, one of those being of a trans man of experience, something in which needs to be more study done of. Again, when we talk about people of trans experience, we oftentimes talk of trans women, and we negate the fact that there are men of trans experience that are at risk of contracting HIV/AIDS. 2010, there were 44 confirmed cases. 2011, there were 47. 2012, there was 41. And 2013, there was 42. Also, in 2011, there was the other trans men that account for the 2 trans men that were confirmed HIV positive. HIV diagnosis among transgender persons by gender identity and age diagnosed in New York City. As we can see, for the demographic in which I found out when I, my own self, found out my status, was the 20 to 29. Again, oftentimes for women of trans experience, especially women of color, we are dispelled from our homes at younger ages. So again, I myself wasn't shocked to see that the 13 to 19 age bracket was as low as it was, but I wondered how was that accurately accounted for, especially knowing that a lot of us are homeless and a lot of us are dependent upon others in our community to take care of us, and we sometimes often have not had the proper protocols and training ourselves. It is hard to take care of this population when we cannot address our own disparities and take care of ourselves. HIV diagnosis among transgender person by gender identity and race ethnicity. Again, it is not surprising that Black and Hispanic, in comparison to our white and Asian Pacific Islanders, is much higher. Now, I would also like to speak upon our Asian Pacific Islanders. I personally feel as if it is not enough research that is done on this population, so that's why the numbers seem to be smaller in representation. Because again, when we think of trans people of color, we oftentimes think of the African American woman of trans experience and the Latina woman of trans experience, not noting that there are other demographics that identify as people of color. New HIV diagnosis amongst transgender persons by gender identity and type of HIV risk. Again, sex with males is the highest percentile, which that is not a shocker for anyone in this room, I hope. What is a shocker and disheartening for me is a woman that is working on a study now that has roughly 80 participants that are trans women of color, and a third of them has contracted a secondary STI, and yet that does not raise alarm. That is problematic for me. What is also problematic is the fact that we do not address the issues that oftentimes men that sleep with women of trans experience, they identify as cisgender heterosexual men. We do not take into account that those cisgender men are shamed for being trans attracted to women like myself. We do not take into account that those men oftentimes have cisgender women, wives and spouses in which they go home, in which they sleep with, in which they spread HIV and other STIs to. We do not take into account that some of those women could be in domestic violence relationship, and you cannot tell your abuser to put on a condom. We do not take into account that oftentimes those men that partake in survival sex work with trans women of color oftentimes do not pick up the same woman night after night or whenever they visit the stroll. So not only is that problematic or it raises a flag, it is not a siloed issue. It affects every one of us in this room. Because when you shame someone that loves someone that is of trans experience, then you are just as responsible for making sure you are just as responsible in spreading HIV and AIDS with your stigma. New HIV diagnosis among foreign-born transgender persons by region of birth. It is not surprising, again, that majority of the women come from Central America, because with the women that we work with in our study, roughly 95% of them are undocumented. They are leaving countries in which they are being killed at astronomical rates for being themselves and trying to live in their authentic truth. Now, the question has been raised. What is the transgender community doing? As a member of Positively Trans, and I, along with several other noteworthy trans activists and advocates, along with one trans man, have decided that we will no longer just be statistics, that we will stand up and we will raise the alarm for our issues.
Oh, sorry. I thought I did. Sorry.
Pause it, 1 second. Yeah.
Well, this video is just a brief clip of, again, I, along with several other noteworthy women of trans experience, that decided to create a national board to discuss issues.
Hello, my name is Cecilia Chung. I am the Senior Strategist of the Transgender Law Center, and I am also directing the Positively Trans Project.
My name is Octavia Lewin, and I am a member of Positively Trans National Advisory Board.
My name is Channing Celeste Wayne, and I am a member of the Positively Trans National Advisory Board.
My name is Tila Lorraine Love, and I'm a member of the Positively Trans Advisory Board.
My name is Tommy Luckett, and I'm a member of the Positively Trans National Advisory Board.
Being a part of this board has fostered a relationship with women that I did not even know existed.
The board is important to me because it brings together powerful transgender men and women with a special emphasis on transgender women of color from various regions throughout the country so that our voices are the catalyst to set policy and HIV decisions regarding transgender lives.
The reason why I think that this is absolutely necessary is because it is our season to come together and unite as a community so that we can begin to bring a lot of our community who is suffering in rural places to a place where they can be empowered.
The board is important to me because it gives girls and guys like me the opportunity to be at the table, making important decisions and discussing issues that are related to the transgender community.
Now, what can you do to assist the transgender community? You can educate your staff on the disparities of the transgender community. You can stress the importance of meeting the community where they are. You can check your privilege at the door. And do not assume that all transgender people are the same or at the same place in their transition. And allow us to be the experts of our own narratives. So I leave you with a quote from my mentor. People do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. Avery Wyatt, MPH, DeKalb County Board of Health. Thank you. Open the floor for questions and comments.
Great. Thank you very much, Octavia. So we're just going to open up the program for people to make comments or questions about our topic today, which is the transgender community. I'm going to actually do it a little backwards this year. So I'm going to have our audience here at Roosevelt Hospital start us off. And I'm also wondering if Dr. Mullen or Matt Bainey might want to talk a little bit about some of the work that we're doing here as well. Maybe just to get us started. But yeah, come up to the mic so everybody can hear you.
Hi, thanks everybody for coming in. Otavia, that was beautiful. It was really great, and it's something that hits us all in our heart. And I've been taking care of transgender people for many, many years, and we're getting better and better at it. So we're looking forward to going forward with our program here at Mount Sinai at the Institute of Advanced Medicine. For Advanced Medicine, we have the total support of our executive board in going forward with the transgender program. And we are looking forward to doing this within the next year. We've been doing it all along, but this will be a formal program, and we are getting experts from all across the country to come and help us do this. So it's a very, very exciting time. Matt, do you want to say anything else about it?
Thank you very much. That was just great. Very educational. Just to back up with some of the things that Michael was saying, our program that we were going to be putting into place at our 275 7th Avenue site under the Institute in Chelsea will be predominantly a transgender health program that's doing primary care, but it's also being put together as the first program in New York City to provide sexual reassignment surgeries if it's appropriate and it is something that somebody's interested in exploring. So our programs will have evaluation components at our 275 site that will include mental health, urology, GYN, general surgery, many, many other specialties on site. Do the evaluations, all of our surgeries will be done at Beth Israel, and the follow-up care will once again be provided at our Chelsea location. Actually, we're a little bit more advanced in our planning than what you might think, because we are planning in our first year, which should start January 1st, to do 35 surgeries in the first year. After that, we're planning on approximately 100 a year. So we are very aggressive, and we're making sure that this does happen. As Michael said, everybody from the president of our system on down has been pushing us to make sure that this happens, and it's got a lot of support, and we are making sure that it happens as well. And it's because of people like you who are pressing us. Thank you very much for doing that. Anything else?
That's perfect. Anybody have any questions about what we're doing or the Institute?
Great. So I'm going to open it up. If anybody has any questions or comments, if you'll just come on up. Sure.
I'm Josh. I just have a question about, I have a bunch of friends that are pre-op and post-op. Is there, and maybe the medical team can answer this more, in diagnosing HIV and secondary STIs, is there a difference in treatment and care for pre-op versus post-op patient as far as medically and how staff would approach that?
Sorry, Dr. Mullen, can you come back up? We just need to make sure that the other folks in the audience can hear you.
There really is not a difference. Sometimes we always have to take into concern hormonal treatments and the interaction with some of the antiretroviral agents. But as you probably know, therapy has gotten a lot easier in a sense, and there are a lot less interactions. So that's very exciting going forward. We don't use the protease inhibitors as much anymore. So we have easier regimens that are tolerated very well. And as far as STIs, there's really no difference. We haven't really seen, we're limited in a sense, but from what I know from the literature, I haven't really seen any increase. The one thing that's causing a lot of increase in STIs is PrEP, as you might know, because people aren't taking the precautions that once taken.
Sure. Octavia, I had a question. I'm going to stand too.
Just as far as your experience so far, are you finding that one-on-one interaction, one-on-one engagement, one-on-one support, or social media, like what is starting to become some of the best ways to show support for the community to meaningfully connect, not just say, hashtag I support this thing, okay, you're on your own, figure it out, but is there something that the people in your community that you're working with you see is touching them and helping them, maybe beyond saying, hey, hashtag, and then I'm done for the day. Do you know what I mean?
How can you all leverage your power to assist us? A, you can stop being gatekeepers for the most part. Start allowing us to say, hey, this is what we're going through, and these are the tools in which we need to address those issues. Being an ally does not mean that you have to be the saving grace. Being an ally can mean that you can just use your power, your privilege, to leverage spaces that we are not even privileged to have access to get into. I will use myself again, for instance. Me, normally, I oftentimes bring young trans people with me. Because again, being a woman of trans experience, being a woman that is HIV positive, I have to face my own truth. And doing this work, it is very stressing and very taxing. Being a woman that, again, is HIV positive, knowing my neuropathy is now starting to act up, knowing that the stress of doing or being an advocate and an activist, it has caused my viral load to go up and my T cells to go down. Those are things in which I am aware of. Those are things in which I make sure that I make space for others like myself, because space was not always made for people like me. I had to raise a lot of hell in order to get to where I am now. And I personally don't want anyone else to have to go through the hell that I had to just to be able to stand up at a podium and address people that have the access, the tools, and the resources to make sure that not one more person like myself have to go through doing survival sex work, have to go through being homeless, have to go through rather worrying about, you know what, I know that if I take this extra $50 to have sex with this person without a condom, that I'm putting myself at risk, but yet I need to pay another night at my hotel room. I need to get food to go in my stomach. So again, when people start leveraging their powers and using it to make access for people like myself, that is when you will see the paradigm shift.
Great.
Octavia, thank you for your information. I had no idea about the 35-year-old lifespan. That's shocking. I'm here for a very specific reason. It deals with stress reduction. It deals with stress reduction using medical professionals. And I have a group of friends who have provided complementary therapy for free, particularly outreach towards people who are HIV and particularly friendly towards the trans community. And they've been homeless without a place to do it for over a year. And it dawned on me a couple of weeks ago that every time one of the people goes in to talk to these people, they say, oh, it's about storage because it's on the weekends, it's free. I feel, something said to me, I wonder if they're being discriminated against. So my word to you and all of the people with resources here is, if you know of a place that can provide access to licensed professional acupuncturists and massage therapists who provide these services free for people with HIV, please talk to me and I'll put you in touch with them, because they've been looking for over 9 months and they can't get in anywhere, including many of the well-known places that we all are aware of. So that's my point.
Great. Any other questions or comments? You have to come back up. And then I'm going to ask our other side.
Just quickly, so I've been dealing, as I said, with many transgender patients and people and for over the years, and I was just wondering how you feel about the Caitlyn Jenner. If that has, if you don't want to comment, don't comment. If it has helped the cause, because I've never met a transgender person like that, So and I have mixed feelings about it, but I was wondering how you feel about that.
Again, she is a person of privilege. We cannot deny that. She was a person that one minute you saw them and then the next you saw her. That doesn't work for majority of us. We do not have discretionary income in which we can pay for all of the surgeries in which we choose to have. Also, she's a Republican. So, with that being said, everything in which majority of us have fought for or is still fighting for, she would never have to know what it's like to be discriminated against from going into a restaurant, because she can buy out the whole restaurant. She would never have to experience what it's like to be denied service to use the restroom. I know majority of me and my girlfriends, when we go to the restroom, we don't go to play pity pat, and we don't go to have a meeting in the ladies' room. We go to use the restroom. But unfortunately, that is the reality of what is going on with my sisters in Texas, which a measure has been repealed where you could be locked up for using the bathroom the way you identify. And that is sad that, again, someone with that much privilege and power would not stand up and say, you know what, that is wrong. Regardless of how my political affiliations are, we are human beings. And to know that we are treated less than, I always tell people, think about PETA. If a dog gets hit by a car, that dog will receive free medical care. That dog will receive all of its shots. That dog will receive advertisement on television. And that dog will receive a year's worth of free dog food if adopted by the right people. That does not happen for us. We can give those leisures, and we can give those to animals. There are laws on the books where you can be incarcerated for mistreating animals. Ask Michael Vick. So, again, 24 of us have been murdered. Again, 34 states do not have protection for people of trans experience. Again, not all of New York State has protection for people of trans experience. Because oftentimes when we get on the bus to lobby in Albany, there are places that if we get off the bus, we could be refused services. So for many of us, that is like taking a trip on the Underground Railroad. And that is sad that people have to experience that in 2015.
Thank you. Great. So,
hi, Octavia. Thank you so much. My name is Kelsey Louie, and I'm the CEO of Gay Men's Health Crisis. And I just wanted to thank you for reminding all of us that there's still so much work to be done. But I just wanted to take a moment to share with everybody from one of my experiences in terms of one of the points you made about listening to the trans community. So at GMHC, we set out a few months ago, maybe even a year ago, to say that we were going to make our place more trans-affirming. So what happened, we gathered a bunch of staff and we came up with some ideas, and we made a fatal mistake. We did not include a trans person in that committee. So I went to a CAB meeting, a Consumer Advisory Board meeting, and I proudly got up there and said, the committee came up with this great idea, and we will have our first gender-neutral bathroom. And a few people applauded. It was great, because it is great. It's great for GMHC, and it's a small step. But the one trans person in the room got up, slammed her hand on a table, and said, I don't know if I can say this, F bathrooms, we need jobs. Mm-hmm. And I thought, my gosh, how did we miss the mark? It was so basic. When do we not listen to the constituents that we're trying to serve? So I'm here to make a pledge to you and to the rest of the trans community that GMHC will continue to listen to the trans community in terms of figuring out what what we need to do to support the trans community. And I'm really proud to announce that we are in the planning stages of holding a trans job fair in early February. We are working with our partners. We are working with people who aren't partners yet to figure out which are the companies, not just nonprofits, which is what a trans person told me. We don't just work in nonprofits, to really set up access, as you said. So I just wanted to announce that. And by announcing that, that means we have to do it. So thank you.
All right.
Great. So we're running a little short on time now, and we have a little bit more left in our program. So I want to thank Octavia again for joining us today for your presentation. Great. And so we're going to move on to the next part of our program.
Hello and good afternoon. My name is M. David Solivan. I am a Filipino transgender man and a human rights activist and community organizer for the transgender community. I've been working at GMHC for the past 3 years as a mental health counselor. I am also a founding member of a committee at GMHC that identifies and develops programmatic solutions to deliver better services for the transgender community living with or affected by HIV and AIDS. Now, on this special day, it is important to honor those that we have lost this past year, as well as the clients of Mount Sinai Institute for Advanced Medicine. Please join me as we reflect and listen to Loose Cattle, featuring Tony Award winner Michael Cerveris and Kimberly Kay.
Thank you so much for letting us be part of this really important and meaningful day, and thank you, Octavia, for raising hell for so long.
There are places I remember all my life, though some have changed, some forever, not for better. Some have gone, and some remain. All these places have their moments with lovers and friends. I still can recall. Some are dead and some are living. In my life, I've loved them all. But of all these new, though I know I'll never lose affection for people and things that went before. I know I'll often stop and think about them. In my life, I love you more. Though I know I'll never lose affection for people and things that went before. I know I'll often stop and think about them. In my life, I love you more.
Thank you very much. That was really, really beautiful. And I always get a little teary-eyed on this day because these deaths were so unnecessary and very, very tragic. Now I'd like for you to join me in a moment of silence in honor of those who have died of HIV/AIDS or violence. Thank you very much. At this time, I would like to invite our audience members here at Mount Sinai West, as well as other clinics, listening in to now call out names of friends, family, or loved ones that are no longer with us. Thank you very much.
So on behalf of Mount Sinai Institute for Advanced Medicine, I'd like to thank GMHC for co-sponsoring our event today. And a special thank you to our speakers and our performers, and of course our audience for attending our World AIDS Day program. Today's been a time for remembrance and reflection. We gathered here to affirm the power and dignity of all life. We remember and extend a caring embrace to all of those still living who experience forms of prejudice, healthcare injustice, discrimination, incarceration, or social exclusion. And may we all find the vision and the strength to stand together in compassionate solidarity with one another until the world we live in is the world of which we dream. So I want to thank everyone for attending today, and we just want to show you a very short presentation by a transgender man. The volume.
The first time I uttered a prayer was in a glass-stained cathedral. I was kneeling long after the congregation was on its feet, dipped both hands into holy water, traced the Trinity across my chest, my tiny body drooping like a question mark all over the wooden pew. I asked Jesus to fix me. And when he did not answer, I befriended silence in the hopes that my sin would burn and salt my mouth would dissolve like sugar on tongue, but shame lingered as an aftertaste. In an attempt to reintroduce me to sanctity, my mother told me of the miracle I was. said I could grow up to be anything I want, I decided to be a boy. It was cute. I had snapback, toothless grin, used skin knees as street cred, played hide and seek with what was left of my girl. I was it, the winner to a game the other kids couldn't play. I was the mystery of an anatomy, a question asked but not answered, tight roping between awkward boy and apologetic girl. And when I turned 12, the boy phase wasn't deemed cute anymore. It was met with nostalgic aunts who missed seeing my knees in the shadow of skirts, who reminded me that my kind of attitude would never bring a husband home, that I exist for heterosexual marriage and childbearing, and I swallowed the insults along with the slurs. Naturally, I did not come out of the closet. The kids at my school opened it without my permission, called me by a name I did not recognize, said lesbian, but I was more boy than girl, more Ken than Barbie. It had nothing to do with hating my body. I just love it enough to let it go. I treat it like a house, and when your house is falling apart, you do not evacuate. You make it comfortable enough to house all your insides. You make it pretty enough to invite guests over. You make the floorboards strong enough to stand on. My mother fears I have named myself after fading things, as she counts the echoes left behind by Maya Hall, Leela Alcon, Blake Brockington. She fears that I'll die without a whisper, that I will turn into what a shame conversations at the bus stop. She claims I've turned myself into a mausoleum, that I am walking casket. News headlines has turned my identity into a spectacle. Bruce Jenner on everyone's lips, while the brutality of living in this body becomes an asterisk at the bottom of equality pages. No one ever thinks of us as human, because we are more ghost than flesh, because people fear that my gender expression is a trick, that it exists to be perverse, that it ensnares them without their consent, that my body is a feast for their eyes and hands, and once they have fed off my queer, they'll regurgitate all the parts they did not like. They'll put me back into the closet, hang me with all their other skeletons. I will be the best attraction. Can you see how easy it is to talk people into coffins, to misspell their names on gravestones, and people still wonder while there are boys rotting their girl away in high school hallways. They're afraid of becoming another hashtag in a second, afraid of classroom discussions becoming like Judgment Day. And now, oncoming traffic is embracing more transgender children than parents. I wonder how long it will be before the trans suicide notes start to feel redundant, before we realize that our bodies become lessons about sin way before we learn how to love them. Like God didn't save all this breath and mercy, like my blood is not the wine that washed over Jesus' feet. My prayers are now getting stuck in my throat. Maybe I am finally fixed. Maybe I just don't care. Maybe God finally listened to my prayers.